We have another kind of topic I wanted to get to here, and it's from your man Jamie Carragher here, and he was kind of giving some reasons as to why Spurs have been kind of failing. This is actually just after his Everton match. He said, "I find it a bit lazy punditry to say Tottenham are Spursy, or they'll never do this, they'll never do that. But that squad of players there, that 11 that you see tonight, that have blown leads to Southampton and Everton respectively, where do you think this Tottenham team should be?" So there's a lack of backbone there, not at the top of the league. Of course not, because these players are simply not good enough, says Jamie Carragher. Where Tottenham are in fourth position, I actually think they're slightly overachieving, if I'm being totally honest. Do you agree with Jamie Carragher actually here that Spurs are maybe more bottling top four, not because of leadership, more just lack of quality?
No, I think lack of quality is a problem, but it's not that in itself is quite lazy because you can write, well, the player's not good enough. That's the reason. It doesn't matter. You could have the best squad in the world. If you're not being led and properly coached by a manager, you got no chance. You know, Pochettino lost 4 games with PSG, that PSG side, and was criticised as being a failure. And this current guy's lost 8 games. It doesn't matter how good your team is. It's about how they're coached. And this team could perform much, much better than we've seen this season. The fact that this is the football we're playing with those players is insane to me. It's like mad. There must be a manager out there that can get this team playing better football than they have played. Be able to keep the ball after against a 10-man Everton side. It's madness to say that we shouldn't be able to do that. Of course we should. But if you've been drilled in the way that they've been drilled for a year, you can't just change on a dime. Like people were saying that why is Stellini playing the same formation? Do you know how it's about getting more out of what they're currently doing? Not like, you've got to evolve slowly. You can't just change it, put like 4-4-2 or change the system that they've been drilling for years and for 18 months. But I'm one that performed well under Stellini when Conte wasn't there. So it wasn't shocking to me that we played that same team and same sort of style. And obviously, we didn't have Ben Davies on that left wing back. It gave us so much stability. And Perisic gives us no stability. Good in the final third, very good. Like his delivery is excellent, and he's got 9 or 10 assists or whatever it is this season. But to answer your question, is that the reason why we're performing and the way we are is 10. There's 10 reasons why. It's not just
down to that one.
No, it's impossible to know. And we could get another manager who will turn this round, and can get more. But yeah, I mean, I think actually to finish to end what I'm saying and agree with him, for us to be in 4th position with that defense is a miracle. Like take Romero out, and Romero has had good moments, but has been probably 6 out of 10 for Spurs this season. So it had some really great games, but by and large, about 6 out of 10. To have to the rest of them don't get into any defense in the top 10. No, Arsenal, Manchester United, Chelsea wouldn't even look at Longley. Wouldn't even the fact that I'll tell you why we might be in crisis. Because our solution to our defensive issues is to sign Clement Longley. Like, Clement Longley is not good enough. He seems like a nice guy, and apparently he's well liked in the dressing room, all that bullshit. He's not good enough.
Yeah. And also, I think too, people don't rate our defenders, Flav. Simple as nobody wants Eric Dyer, nobody wants Sanchez, nobody wants these guys. Nobody is taking Jose Mourinho isn't taking Eric Dyer with him to Roma. He isn't, no one is poaching off these players to help them, build their Premier League team or whatever either. So I'm with you on that account. What I would say, just where Carragher, I think, is also, like you said, maybe a bit wrong to put it all on one sort of, thing, is that I do feel like Spurs do still need leadership. I see where he's coming from, because it's like leadership only gets you so far. You still need top 4 level players. You still need a squad full of very, very good players. But yeah, I do feel like the best place to start is leadership. We still have great players in this team. Like you mentioned, Romero. We still have Kulusevski, Bentancur, huge players for the future. It's not to say that we're just devoid of any talent or quality whatsoever. There is quality there. I just don't. I see where he's coming from, where it's like there are huge drop-offs in the quality, where you have a guy like Harry Kane, who's basically the best striker in the world, the best striker we've ever seen at our club. And then you have Eric Dyer playing in the same exact 11. So it does make you think of the different drop-offs in quality in
For 8
terms
years.
of the team. Say that, sorry?
For 8 years.
For 8 years. Oh, I mean, the testimonial is, let's say it's not being awaited. Let's say we're not waiting it. But I mean, I don't know, Dave. Like, I feel like I see where he's coming from, that we complain a lot about the lack of quality. Oh, yeah. So I'm a hypocrite if I'm not going to agree partially with Carragher. But I think the leadership factor, it is the best place to start, because we have good players still in this team. There are players like Romero. So maybe it is better just to round them all together and have some sort of focal point, some sort of captain there that they can all get behind. Because we also have mentioned this too, there really is no accountability culture at the club either. And that also stems from the captain. So I feel like it is, we do need a leader. I do think that's the right place to start. So I actually disagree with Carragher. I think a leader is the right place to start.
I actually think it's a combination of both, if you want me to be brutally honest. I think, look, I'll start on leadership. You got to question, why have we had such a high volume of players coming in and out, a massive turnover of the last 3 years of players? And the answer is simple. A good leader helps these players settle. They create a good environment which helps them settle, which reduces that sort of high turnover of players. We don't have that. When you see cliques forming in the dressing room like we've seen over the last few years, that shows me that there's no leadership, because a good leader pulls that all together. It erodes the Welsh mafia, the French mafia, whatever other mafia you want, the ice cream mafia, I don't care. You don't have any of that if you have a good leader. You see them playing the likes of cricket and stuff like that, putting out videos like that when we're losing. A good leader doesn't allow that to happen. First of all, a good leader makes sure they're practicing with the right football. Like I said yesterday, Jack, they've got foot tennis tables and stuff like that. Half of them can't control the ball or pass the ball first time. Go out and play some of that. A good leader would get them to do fun activities if that's what they need, while doing it with the right ball. When you've got players that are going to leave you because they don't agree with what the manager said, in like Danny Rose's case on the documentary with Mourinho, Ben Davies with Nuno and stuff like that. A good leader stops that. A good leader makes sure they come to him, he speaks to the manager, or he speaks to the owner, not them going. So that also shows me that there's not enough leadership there. When you see them complaining about the training under the last 4 or 5 different managers now, all we've heard is repetitive, underworked, overworked, blah, 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 blah. A good leader makes sure that doesn't happen, that everyone, if they're complaining about the repetitiveness of the defensive training, for instance, under Conte, a good leader shouts at them or stops and starts saying, guys, we concede a lot of goals. This is why we're doing it. Shut up, moaning, and get on with the work. But we don't seem to have that. The players sort of seem to be a law on their own. They seem to do what they want. So for me, I think, it does start with leadership, because any manager that comes in here, they have the least say out of anybody. And ultimately, it takes a good manager to lead them, but he also needs help inside that dressing room. He needs good, solid, stand-up professionals that also hold people to account, because you can't have a manager bollocking the players week in, week out, calling them out in the press week in, week out, because that leads to what we've seen with Antonio Conte. It leads to what we sort of seen with Jose Mourinho. If you have good leaders in that squad, they can take some of them conversations out your hands and have them good, honest conversations and stuff like that. But that's not happening at Tottenham Hotspur. So I do think he's got a point. I definitely think, Jack, you got a point when it comes to leadership. I do think we have to sort of take that into account, because the reality is everything these managers are saying, we dismiss it as ego-driven or that they're removing the blame, when in reality they're right in what they're saying. They're 100% right. And, they also get frustrated with the sort of lack of leadership and the lack of top pros within that club. You also look at our recruitment. A lot of it under Paratici has been 25 or under. Them players are looking for leaders, and they've come into an environment where there is no leaders. And that's sort of why we're seeing what we've seen this year, Jack. But then you also go into the quality. I mean, look, Hugo Lloris, brilliant servant, but he can't play out with his feet. We're trying to play the modern way of football. He's no longer good enough. That alludes to the quality. Eric Dyer, useless. Can't defend, can't play with the ball either. You got Ben Davies, good defender, but shit on the ball. Sanchez, you're lucky if the guy can stay on his feet. Langley, good on the ball, but crap defensively. So, I do think quality, especially across that back line, is a major, major issue. We complain about the tactics these managers that we've brought in implement, but the reality is they're only supposed to be implemented when you don't have the ball. But when we give away the ball as much as we do, that's why we sit back as much as we do. It's not, you heard Stellini say it after Everton. Conte said it, and Jose said it before. I'm not instructing these players to sit back that deep. But when they're asking them to play out from the back and we lose the ball inside our own half, that's why we're pinned back as much as we are. So you have to switch up that quality for any manager to be given a chance. But you also have to change that leadership in the dressing room for any manager to have a chance when they get in here. Because the reality is, you know, we sack a manager, we have the next guy in, we win a couple of games, and we go on a little run, and the perception is all of a sudden that, you know, it was the manager beforehand. When in reality, that run ends up coming to a halt, like we've seen a number of times over the last 3 years. You know, last 4 years, that run eventually comes to a halt. And we can't keep blaming the manager on every situation. Sometimes you just got to look at the squad and look at other areas and say, he's been let down here, we've been let down here. And quality and leadership is why we've seen a proportion of what we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years, because it just hasn't been there.
What do you think, Flap?
Well, I would say two things. One, that you would say there were leaders in our squad at the end of last season. That's Højbjerg, Dyer, Lloris, Kane. There was a spine of leadership in that team that's been completely void this season. And I would say that and this isn't going to surprise you, the main part of that, the reason for that, is Conte's involvement in the management of the club. That said, we need a manager to come in and force change, right? So look what Pochettino did when he took over. There was a similar sort of thing. There was a cabal of players that weren't going to pull in his direction, and he made big decisions in either getting them out of the club or dropping them. You remember how quickly Bentaleb and Mason came into the midfield? Two players that had been in and around the first team, but not, you know, and I know Sherwood played them a bit before Pochettino, but he got in players that were going to listen to him, that were going to listen to his ideas, and that's what we need. Like, if we're not going to spend, we need an identity. If we're not going to compete with Chelsea and these players, we need an identity. We need a manager who's going to build a project. And as fans, we need to be super patient with that project.